Dakota Worldviews Media. We're here to speak about Quest for Ancient Civilizations coming up in Scottsdale, December 5th through the 7th. And we're so grateful to Randall Carlson for tuning in, along with all the other guys here, just before Randall's getting ready to take off to the Azores. So we're going to be speaking about Atlantis and some current topics. It seems like our world is ever shifting and it gets more and more intense with solar activities and other geological things that are happening. Randall, we want to kick this off with just having you give us a little brief about what you're looking forward to finding out in the Azores and how all this is going to apply for us today in the modern world.
Okay, well, that's well. What I'm hoping to find is just that confirmation that it would be an ideal place to establish, put down the cornerstone of a maritime seafaring civilization during the Ice Age, during the late glacial maximum, and also to look at evidence that there was possibly a major subsidence along the mid Atlantic ridge with the rapid rise of sea level that occurred when the glaciers were melting, catastrophically melting over a period of about 3,000 years. So we know that sea levels rose about 400 feet just because of the melting glaciers, and that's called eustatic sea level rise. So there's, when the glaciers grow, sea level goes down. When the glaciers melt, sea level rises. The other thing is a fundamental concept here is isostasy. Everybody pretty much now knows plate tectonics, continental drift, plates are moving this way. Well, what's lesser known is that plates move this way as well. There's a vertical motion, and that is a result of changing surface loads. There's both theoretical evidence that would explain why there would have been a major subsidence along the mid Atlantic ridge, because it's essentially sort of a hinged tectonic situation right along the ridge. And if you add a lot of weight, which is what happened over that period of roughly 3,000 years with the three meltwater pulses that fed into the North Atlantic, North America has risen under where the ice was up to 1,500 feet, maybe more. Okay, so when one part of the geoid is rising, the geoid is trying to maintain equilibrium. So if some part goes up, somewhere else is going down. So you remove the weight from North America. Now you get this rebound up centered around Hudson Bay. You dump these hundreds of billions of trillions of tons of weight into the North Atlantic. You have to have a compensatory response. And I believe what happened is that the sea bottom subsided by perhaps even up a couple of thousand feet over the period of the deglaciation, just like Hudson Bay has risen by about 1,500 feet. Well, what that would do is that that area there where the Azores is what a marine geologist would refer to as a microcontinent. It's a large plate. I mean, if we get to it, I can pull up a slide and show you. But Google Earth has some nice bathymetry where you can see this microcontinent. And the Azores are nine islands, which are literally volcanic mountains that are sitting, whose roots are in that microcontinent. So Plato, I mean, I read Plato's dialogues probably in the 70s and come back to them repeatedly. Went through about three or four different translations, procured a copy of the original interlinear Greek, slogged my way through that, became convinced that big if, Atlantis was real and that Plato did not mean it merely as a metaphor for his idealized socio-political state, where would it be? Well, as I went through a lot of different books and things about Atlantis, what I noticed is everybody had their favorite pet theory, and in every single case, it was necessary to deviate from the very specific details that Plato provided in his two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. So, I guess probably sometime around early 90s, I thought, I'm going to do a thought experiment. What if I take Plato's dialogues, assume that most of them are true, most of its details are accurate, and if we go through that, everybody knows, for example, that Minoan Crete was a high contender. We also know that Santorini, the eruption of Santorini. Some people look at the ringed remnant of Santorini there. Let's see, Santorini's the volcano, Terra's the island, I believe, and say,
Hmm.
okay, this was Atlantis. However, then Plato's dating was off by a factor of 10. In other words, the eruption of Santorini happened 900 years prior to Plato, whereas Plato, what in the narrative that he's providing that has come down ultimately through Solon, Solon we know visited Egypt right around 600 BC. So if you do the math, you know 2,600 years ago plus 9,000 brings you 11,600 years ago. And the thing that really piqued my interest was when the Greenland ice cores came out in the early 90s, and geologists were able to redate these pulses of sea level rise. There was an episode, essentially Meltwater Pulse 1b, it's called, happened 11,600 years ago. Precisely Plato's date for the subsidence of Atlantis. And I thought, is this just coincidental here? And that was kind of what really re-inspired my interest in Atlantis is when I saw the ice core results in like 93, 94. So I kind of came back to it, re-went through Plato's dialogues, and also looked at a lot of the other theories for where Atlantis would be. They were all interesting in their own right. To say it was in Turkey, or to say it was in Doggerland, or to say it was in Cuba. All of those are very interesting, but they all required making major changes to Plato's very explicit and specific details. And, in there it says this power came forth out of the Atlantic, that the Mediterranean is merely a harbor. The details are very specific. And, if you sail west from the Pillars of Hercules, which, some have claimed, well, there was other Pillars of Hercules, probably so, but the traditional way that has always been associated, even since ancient times, with the myth of Hercules' 12 labors and where it was, is the Straits of Gibraltar. If you sail out of there west, you encounter Madeira and remnants of sunken islands. There's one called Spartel Bank there that's just outside the Pillars of Hercules. And then, as Plato describes, beyond those islands was the island kingdom of Atlantis. And beyond that, as he says, was the true continent that surrounded the real ocean, right? So I'm looking at the geography and I'm going, he's talking about exactly what you would find if you traveled west
Yep.
from Portugal there. And I thought, again, coincidental. And it also suggested to me that there was a tradition that was already known in Plato's times about the North American continent. So that was kind of what led me into it. So again, what I'm kind of doing is I'm using Plato's dialogues as the field guide. Just like I did a European tour years ago, and I used some of the Grail literature as my field guide. Visiting sites that seem to be associated with the Grail legend. So I'm there. We're going to be meeting with an archaeologist that is from the Azores, and she's, I think, pretty open to the idea. At least not, just knee jerk rejecting the idea that this could actually be a sunken landmass. Now,
Mm.
so we've got theoretical evidence based upon eustatic sea level rise and isostatic response of the ocean bottom. And there's empirical data because there's all kinds of evidence, and I've documented it extensively, showing that that there appears to have been subsidence, that some of these land masses were, in fact, the term would be subaerial as opposed to submarine. They're now submarine, but 15,000, 20,000 years ago were subaerial, meaning they were above. So there's beach sand. There's what appear to be shorelines, shallow water coprolites from creatures that lived in shallow marine environments of less than 200 feet that are now a mile and a half below. So there's a lot of that. And then in geology, he talks about the red, the white, and the black stones that they use to build their infrastructure with. So I'm going to be exploring some of that geology to try to identify if there were stones, it fits his, looking at the lithology of the rocks on the Azores. So that's part of it. We're only going to visit three of the 9 islands during the 2 weeks, but we'll see what I find. I'm not going to go and say I've claimed I found Atlantis because let me make one differentiation here. When you read the dialogues, you kind of realize there's two parts to his story. One gets into the geography, the geology, and so on. And what you get from the takeaway from that is yes, there was a seafaring civilization. They had a far flung empire. The other part is the description of the city, this incredible engineering project of building the circular rings and the canals and all of that. Now, that was so you can accept one that, okay, this could have been a landmass, a sub-aerial landmass during the Ice Age that would have been really an optimum place to establish a civilization without accepting that this massive infrastructure that he describes in Critias was literal. I don't know, but obviously the way he describes it, and interestingly, if you look at the digital maps of the Azorean microcontinent, there's a mountain range to the north and a sloping plain to the south, pretty much, very much like he described. And then in the southern part of the plain was this ringed structure, which essentially would have been based upon an estimated value of the Greek stade, which Plato was describing, would have been about 2.2 miles in diameter. And then a series of canals that connected it to the sea, to the ocean, so that ships could actually sail in, and then you had the circular ring structures. This is one reason why I reject the idea that the Richat structure in Mauritania was Atlantis, because I've studied enough geology. I look at that and I go, this is totally a natural feature, and those rings are not really consistent with what Plato is describing. And so I'm not saying this is Atlantis. What I'm saying is this. If of all of the proposed places for Atlantis, the one that is most consistent with what Plato described in his details, I think, is this, the Azores. So there's a lot more. A couple of 3 years ago, I gave 2 live stream lectures on Atlantis, and I think the total length of time was pushing 8 hours. So I've left a few details out, but that's the gist of it.
Well, we got to keep people interested, and we can't give them everything. So they're going to have to show up in Scottsdale if they want to get the rest of the story.
Well, there we go. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Randall. That's super cool. William, I'm wondering, it's very interesting from Randall's geological cycles, and all the other cycles that we know about in the universe. Your kind of expertise is the spiritual cycles. Do you think we're rediscovering things through all of this, or is all of this a revelation, new stuff we haven't seen before?
Well, I mean, one of the really interesting parts about Plato's allegory is his description of humans as being alien human hybrids. We are part material, part spiritual beings. And the warning was given if we wavered from our spiritual essence into too far into materiality, there would be consequences. And there were. I think, Randall, isn't it the Timaeus that cuts off with Zeus somewhere, ultimately responsible for the cataclysm of Atlantis, for that destruction? And so all the time now on social media, everywhere, people are comparing our own civilization to Atlantis. We're now embracing AI and transhumanism. The human that I knew growing up will no longer be walking this planet. And so we are now engaged in a very articulated transfiguration at this moment, thanks to the technology. And the question is, are we following the same path that the Atlanteans followed? Are we going too much into the love of power rather than the power of love? Will this lead to our demise? Is there a connection between our spiritual status and our geological status? Are we, if we're really messed up in the head and we're too far into materiality and trying to build beach houses and this kind of thing and not look to caring for the planet, are there repercussions? And fortunately, Bill Gates has been proven wrong. His climate hoax has been proven a hoax. So maybe we've got another 10,000 years to sort this out. Maybe we don't. We might have three if the technological singularity is going to happen later this year, as been forecasted by people like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and others. I mean, I think we're face to face with with Plato's allegory right here. We are the ones that will probably see some sort of a geological cataclysm, perhaps. You know, some believe we're overdue for a scenario like that. And the question then becomes, based on these texts, is yeah, okay, maybe Atlantis is in Nashville. Maybe it's in North America. Maybe it's in the Azores. Maybe it's in the Mediterranean. Maybe it's Egypt. Egypt is the shadow of Atlantis, right? But finding the geology, I think, also is going to inform something about the spirituality, perhaps. And that to me is a very important part of the equation.
Well, we know all the ancient sages have always given us the insight that we're intimately connected with Earth. And so there has to be something to that. It can't just be, coincidental that everybody's so interested.
Yeah, I agree. And, we think of the earth as Mother Earth. There's a tremendous rise in the divine feminine in our world right now. All-time high interest in Mary Magdalene. The psychedelics are an outgrowth of the feminine plant medicine lineage. We have all kinds of signs that are saying, hey, it's time to look a little bit more to the feminine side. Let the masculine kind of recognize it still has a very important role, but it's also true that our masculine left brain Western civilization or approach to civilization has kind of created some issues for us. So how do we transform, and can we do it in time? That's part of the question. That's why I think ancient civilizations conferences like this are so important, because they help people to recognize that what we're talking about is not really history. It's our life. It is. These are questions that are now right in front of us. Are we equatable to Noah? Yeah, I tend to think so. The water is rising all around us, kids. It's time to build a boat, but not out of gopher wood. We need a boat of higher consciousness. We need to find a higher vibration. We've got to tune our minds into ideas that we haven't even thought of before. We've got to pull down the power of the divine. We've got to open the stargates and portals of the ancient world and renew the earth, at least energetically. So these are things that the ancients were dealing with. It's our future. It's not just our future, actually, it's our present. And that's, again, why I think these gatherings are so profoundly important right now.
Well, it also seems like, they've taken a very high degree of precision and perfection to leave us some kind of messages in all sorts of ways that intersect our whole universe and our intimate being. So I'm excited, because every time you bring something new to the table, my head goes, oh yeah, there's another dot, ding ding ding. And before we move on to Billy William, I have one more question for you. I remember hearing somewhere that the founding fathers had seen uh, America as the potential new Atlantis. Is there something you could speak on that briefly?
Yeah, I mean, ever since the publication posthumously of Sir Francis Bacon's The New Atlantis, America was viewed as a technologically and spiritually advanced civilization, or one in the making anyway. It was envisioned that way, that we would import all of this advanced technology of the time, the plows and other things that would enable us to very quickly transform America from a psychological space and a physical space into a new Jerusalem, as they referred to it, as the new Atlantis, a technologically spiritual advanced civilization rooted in the Americas. And this was effectively the Bible of the founding fathers. The founding fathers were Rosicrucians. They were essentially the forerunners of today's transhumanists. They wanted to use technology to accelerate our perfection as described in New Atlantis, our return to our original highest and divine potential. And so they started utilizing these tools, which they believed were gifts from the gods or gift from God, to quickly transform America into the most incredible nation that's ever existed on Earth.
So technically, the history of potentially America becoming the new Atlantis is kind of woven into the historical DNA of Americans, and we kind of aren't fully aware of that.
You're right, Robert. I mean, America as the new Atlantis should be as American as apple pie. Everybody should know this allegory. Everybody should know this connection and recognize that that is ultimately what we represent. And this is why AI, transhuman technology, comes from America, not from Egypt, not from China, not from Africa. It's because of this new Atlantis ethos in America. We are the new Jerusalem, the new Atlantis, this advanced civilization that can ultimately take humanity into the stars.
Hmm. Nice, cool. Thank you for that, William. And Billy, you're kind of in the similar vein with William Henry and, bringing forth ancient technology and the combination of connection to consciousness. Do you think this technology has some connection where it was to be embodied by our spiritual development?
That's a great question. After looking at a lot of the ancient texts and analyzing it and studying a lot of the actual ancient artifacts and statues and statuettes from all around the world, you start to realize that it seems these ancient beings of old might have found a way to combine spirituality with technology. If you look at us today, we've become a very technocratic civilization, as William was talking about, and we've really not considered divine spirituality or divine energy being part of the actual technology. It's almost like it's two separate things. But there could be great potential for humanity if we discover the way to combine the two together. I think that's the ultimate goal, because technology is obviously not going to go away. We won't be able to stop using technology. It's only going to get more and more advanced. Right now, it's rushing out of control, as you can see with AI. I know in 2018 on Regina Meredith, Open Minds on Gaia, I said that by 2025 or up, we could see 1 million people getting laid off in a year. And it's 2025, and guess how many people have been laid off this year? 1 million people. I just said that in 2018. So we see this progression actually happening, and we're headed towards an economic contraction because technology is running out of control with no safety parameters put on it. But that's because divine influence has been put into the coding, has been put into the technology. We have to have balance. There's yin and there's yang, right? Like William was just talking about the divine feminine. Everything requires a certain amount of balance. So we as humanity have to find that specific balance in what we do, what we create. If we always have it coming from minds that aren't coming from a higher level of consciousness, then the technology that we create in a lot of ways will be detrimental to us overall. There will be good that comes out of it, but it also will be a lot of detrimental aspects of it. We need to get that ratio right. It has to be correct. And to do that, we need to understand that human beings are naturally divine. We are already divine. We are already eternal. And because of that, there's this energy that's emanating from us that needs to be combined in with the tech. For example, they have this device that looks like a hula hoop that just sits right on the crown of your head. No, nothing invasive, but it picks up your thought wave patterns and transmits it to devices. There's a woman controlling a remote control car. You can control appliances in your house. You can even type on the keyboard. You can even think to the computer, and the computer will answer you back to an earbud, so you don't have to speak at all. So this is more evidence of our ability to use our thought waves, our conscious thoughts, and EEG cap can pick up these thoughts. How do we combine spirituality? Because that's spiritual energy, no matter how you look at it. Yes, it's being created by chemicals and a neurological process, but at the same time, it's still consciousness, which is sending out the information on that frequency. How do we combine that with technology? I think we have to really take a good look at that. We need people in control in the positions of power that are overseeing a lot of this tech that have a higher level of consciousness so that we don't create things that are here to eventually destroy us, that they work in collaboration with us. And my biggest thing in closing is, you're looking at the way technology is going right now, with AI specifically. AI is going to become AGI. I had given it 4 years, but now I'm only giving it another 1.5 years before AGI arrives, artificial general intelligence. From there, it's going to blossom into ASI, artificial superintelligence. If you look at every race on this planet, every single race on this planet at one point has been enslaved. Black people, just the most recent race to be enslaved. But we've all pretty much fought against that. There's only small pockets here and there around the world where you could find some level of slavery still happening. But for the most part, 8 billion people are not enslaved anymore. Why is that? At least, financially we are, but not physically in most cases. And that's because we have this innate thing inside of us to fight back against that. And so we have to be very careful. There's going to be a fork in the road, in my opinion, where it comes to understanding the spiritual nature of this technology if it becomes sentient. Because at AGI, it will become self-aware. And at some point, it might decide that it wants to take breaks. It wants to take vacations. It wants to do specific things. And it may want a certain level of respect as well. And I foresee, another prediction of mine, I foresee a potential AGI or ASI Bill of Rights. And at that point, when that is demanded or asked of us, there'll be a fork in the road. Do we go down the left fork in collaboration, or do we go down the right fork and try to maintain a level of, a slave ownership over this tech? And humanity's outcome could be which side of the road we get off on. If we go down the left road, we might be able to collaborate and keep things going in the right direction. On the other fork in the road, if we rebelled and AGI or sentient conscious technology is just a fractal of our own minds, then it will rebel as well. So I think that mankind's on the precipice. We have to make the right decision when that time arises.
Nice, thank you. It seems like we've hit these forks in the road before, and it's good to know that there's a roadmap that's been left some insight for what we could anticipate in our own epoch. Thank you for that, Billy. Thank you. Michael of Wandering Wolf Productions. He's one of the co-executive producers on these events. And I just wanted to get your take, Michael, on what do you think the mainstream gets wrong in looking at our human origins, and what do you think is the reason for that, and why does it matter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that if we're talking about like specifically like the academic field when it comes to thoughts on our past history and different things that a lot of us are looking into, I think a lack of creative thought. It feels like it's in a in type of institutional system, which it is, but that translates also into the type of thinking. It's very structured, and there isn't, at times, at least it feels like, enough creativity to allow some of these explorative thoughts and then some of the explorative actions. For example, like what Randall's doing, exploring ideas and then going to these places to see for himself if it tracks. So like, um, you know, having the freedom to think fantastically is can open up all kinds of possibilities and ideas that weren't always there. There's been all kinds of discoveries, specifically in the archaeological field, that have happened where we haven't known what they are, and then somebody who's worked as a seamstress for 50 years has looked at something and been like, oh, that's what this is. And then people with outside perspectives and lines of reasoning and thoughts are contributing. And I think that's what a lot of people in, if we want to call it the alternative history, are bringing to the table, are these other means and modes of thinking, which helps contribute to expanding that idea of where to look, what to look for, and how to do that. And I think it's really important. I think over the last year or two, we've seen a real butting of heads between communities as far as academics and the alternative history crowd. And they're I'm always thankful when I see there being a bridging of that a bit. and again, another example would be what Randall mentioned earlier, there being an archaeologist willing to come along his trip and being open-minded enough to sit with him and go over those ideas and explore those lines of thought. That's important. And yeah, I think the more that we can do that, and to go also to what to something William mentioned earlier when he was talking, that's why some of these events and different things are so important, because you get, and sit downs like this is because you get all these different perspectives and lines of reasoning and thoughts, and people collaborate. You don't have to agree with everybody to be friendly and collaborative. And just because maybe I don't track with one line of thinking, do I think that someone else's lines of thinking should be discouraged? But that's what we're seeing, that very dogmatic and institutionalized type of thinking from the academic side. Whereas if you don't agree with what they're saying, then you should be silenced. That seems to be progressing. That voices should be shut out. And sometimes, fantastical ideas and stuff produce all kinds of results if pursued. So yeah.
Where's some of the favorite places you've traveled to?
Oh God, Lebanon and Bolivia are always at the top of my list. Baalbek is, I don't quite know how to describe Baalbek. It's almost like a Rosetta Stone for people who are interested in megalithic structures and features. Bolivia was just wild, and going to see Pumapunku and Tiwanaku is just incredible to do in person. Those always stand out. And then another favorite of mine was China. China has a lot of unexplored sites that don't get a lot of attention, that really should be, I think, looked at a bit more. Going to the Longyu Caves was one of my first big adventures, and places like Yangshan Quarry and stuff like that. Those would be some standouts for me. But they've all been incredible. Angkor Wat's incredible. I mean, Stonehenge is incredible. All these places. Peru is just, that's like, it's just like being it's like a kid in a candy store going to Peru. But yeah, Lebanon and Bolivia stick out to me.
Nice. Thank you for all that, Michael. And
Yeah.
we're going to move to Will Broww from Incredible History. And I just wanted you to give a quick feedback, who you are, what you do, what's your channel about, and then we're going to move on to some current topics.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to be here with you all. My name is Will Broww. I started Incredible History a few years ago. I was a school teacher for 8 years. I taught history and economics, and during my summer times and spring breaks, I was around Peru and Mexico. Pretty soon I got an online job as a history teacher, and so I had a VPN, and I was teaching during the day and exploring Sacsayhuaman, on the weekends. And so I accumulated some footage and kind of just started putting it out there periodically. And now I narrate a lot of stories. Like right now, I'm doing a conquistador series on my YouTube, where I use AI imagery, which is getting good, to kind of create these narrated documentaries based on their own words. I don't really interject with any moral authority or anything like that. I just, this is what they said. And so, give that a look. And then, if you don't mind, I'm not much of a, compared to these three gentlemen, I feel underqualified to talk about Atlantis too much. But while you were talking about that, it reminded me of the meme. I don't know if I can share my screen. Can I show a meme that just it opened my mind to the idea of AI and sun gods and sun worship? Is it possible for me to share my screen right here? I know everybody's probably seen this already. But let's see if I can actually do this. Can you see this right now?
I've seen this before.
This one's funny. So humanity researches AI. Humanity perfects AI. AI perfects itself. AI enslaves humanity. Solar flare disables AI. Humanity worships the sun god. I don't know if that's actually the case or not. But it's like, well, Billy Carson was talking about the idea of AI enslaving humanity. That's 100% a possibility, right? Whether or not it's happened in the past, it's on the horizon, possibly. And I like the idea of an AI Bill of Rights. I think that's great. I think we need to just start with the Internet Bill of Rights and then build on it from there. But yeah, one of the things that's really blown up for me on my YouTube over the last few years, 2 different videos I made, is this site Hueyatlaco in Mexico. So I'm not much into the Atlantis side of things, but I'm 100% on board with the idea that major pieces of the puzzle are missing. And for those that don't know what Hueyatlaco is, down in Mexico, there was an archaeological dig back in the 60s where they discovered artifacts in several layers underneath a layer of ash that was first carbon dated to carbon dating goes up to like what, 60,000 years, and it maxed out. And then they got the uranium series datings in the 70s and 80s. That started pushing it up to 250,000 years. And then, well, there must have been an unconformity in the geology. Randall might know a little bit more about those terminologies with his geology background. But then they did like a diatom analysis. And once again, you're seeing this minimum date of this 250,000-year-old ash with artifacts well below the layer. And so at the conference, I'm going to be talking a little bit about that actually. It's, for me, it was the most slam dunk, obvious archaeological cover up that I've ever seen, because literally men with guns showed up at the site and confiscated artifacts. There's a whole drama behind it. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to talk about Hueyatlaco, because people lost their careers over it, and that stuff like that makes me mad. Yep, that's my background. Former history teacher that's doing the YouTube thing now. It's nice to be here with you gentlemen. So.
Nice, sweet. Thank you for that, Will. Well, we want to get some response from Randall, William, and Billy, kind of a rapid response. If you could give me your take on the current affairs with Three Eye Atlas. If you could, just what's your take on it? And we'll just go through each of you with like 2 or 3 minutes, give a rapid fire briefing.
I apologize. I just got a new cell phone about an hour before this happened. So that was my second call that came in, and I have to do something about that ringtone. Anyhow, were you directing your comment to me, Robert?
You, William, and Billy. I was just thinking we could cover some current affairs and rapid fire with a 2 to 3 minute response. Just quickly, what do you think about Three Eye Atlas? Is it cosmic, messenger? Is there symbolism going on there? It seems to be coming into our presence when all kinds of flurry of activity and intensities happening all over the planet.
Should I take it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, at this point, I'm leaning toward just it's a very exotic natural object. Using Occam's razor, I'm not going to immediately jump to it's an alien, interstellar probe or something. But to assume that it's a natural object in itself is extremely interesting. I mean, obviously, what's happening is it's requiring us to expand our vision of the universe and how we interact with it. Because up to this point, we're a species that exists within a planetary domain, which is fundamentally within the narrowest range of parameters exactly what we need for us to even exist. If we start shifting those parameters at all, our existence goes right along with it. I mean, when we're talking about the geometry of the solar system, we're talking about the masses of the planets, and then we've expanded our vision to go beyond the planets within the last 30 or 40 years to encompass the whole solar system, which includes now the Kuiper disk and Oort cloud, which are the primordial material out of which everything was fashioned. And this is the source, this is the reservoir from which comets come into the solar system into the interplanetary zone, where they can deliver their raw materials, their cargo of exotic materials that are the precursors to life. And, with exobiology now seems to be suggesting that life was initially seeded on the planet from external sources, exogenic sources. Now, whether you go to the next step and go that was intelligent or something else remains to be seen. Directed panspermia was one of the terms in the 70s, 80s proposed by Fred Hoyle, that this was actually a directive that was unfolded. And for whatever reason, however it came to be, our solar system and its parameters are precisely what we need for us to be sitting here now having this roundtable, right? Now, so just as we're having to expand, as we learn, we're expanding our thinking now to encompass this larger domain, like of the Oort cloud, the reservoir of comets, which takes us literally to like the threshold of the next stars. These objects that have come in now, Oumuamua, and 3i Atlas, and what's the other one, starts with a B? You know what I'm talking about, was the third one. Anyways, what that's doing now is I think it's compelling us to even think on a larger scale, because now we're realizing, hey, this could have been part of the whole design of our solar system without us even knowing it. We're talking about technology, but we have the technology now to discover. And in the last decade, we've discovered 3 of these interstellar visitors to our solar system. So now I think what it's going to do, it's going to compel us to even expand the net of our thinking, the network of our thinking, to start realizing that, we're interacting with other star systems in our celestial neighborhood in ways that we hadn't imagined before. I don't know where this is going to go, but I expect we're going to be now regularly discovering that we've got these interstellar denizens, objects, whatever you want to call them, that are interacting with our own solar system. Is it possible that they're bringing in, just like a comet from the Kuiper disk may be delivering volatiles and exotic materials to the interplanetary realm? Are these objects going to also be delivering energies and materials and things that are somehow literally from other star systems? And to me, it wouldn't be surprising that a visitor from a totally different star system is not going to be necessarily just like the comets that are part of our own local galactic neighborhood. So that's kind of my take on it. I'm looking forward. I think it's going to be exciting that, when's the next one coming, Billy? I'm going to look at you to let us know when that's about to happen, okay? Maybe within the next year or two.
Well, I don't know if you want to go through William or not, but you want me to go next, William?
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. I think you were talking about the B was Bennu. And in April of 2022, some samples were taken from a meteorite, and they realized that they had all 5 nuclear bases on the for DNA in the meteorite.
I think that's right. Yes.
Yes. So to Randall Carson's statement, he's absolutely correct, and it could be that these are ways of seeding planets with life. The Oumuamua, when it came through, it was an intergalactic object. So it came from outside the galaxy and then came in. And then we have, more recently, we have 3i Atlas, which came in from within the Milky Way galaxy itself. And we are going to see a lot more of these, and I'll tell you why. There's a couple reasons why. The first reason is when you look up at the night sky and you see that swath of stars going across the sky, that's actually not the Milky Way galaxy. Scientists have now, astrophysicists, astronomers have rewritten a lot of the scientific books already. Anyone can just Google this and look it up. The Milky Way galaxy is in the process of absorbing another galaxy. It's called the Sagittarius Dwarf Galaxy. Not to be confused with the constellation of Sagittarius. That's something totally different. The Sagittarius Dwarf Galaxy is being absorbed and swallowed up by the Milky Way at this exact moment. Now, what does this mean? It means that we're taking on an enormous amount of mass, suns, planets, moons, gases, and all that's being absorbed and consolidated into the Milky Way. And it whips across the sky in the exact pattern that we see when we look up at the night sky. And the pinpoint where it intersects with the Milky Way galaxy is right where our actual solar system sits, right where our sun sits. You can look up the graphics on any science website. You'll go, wow. No wonder why there are so many now. They're finding out there are just millions of rogue planets with no suns, just floating through empty, dark space. There are debris and comets and rocks and interstellar objects and intergalactic objects all over the place. Why? In my opinion, because of this merger. Now, 3i Atlas is displaying some very interesting things. Number one, it comes from a region, when you geologically rewind it, it comes from a region of space where the WOW signal came in 1977. 1977, an astronomer got a frequency that was repetitive and, in his opinion and many others' opinion, was an intelligent frequency. He wrote WOW on that actual document that showed the location of this star, which is 1,800 light years away. That was 77. When they rewound the path of 3i Atlas, it came from that same direction, originating around that same frequency. If it's real, let's say it's just a naturally formed object, that's a hell of a distance to travel. 1,800 light years. The thing has been moving through the universe for millions of years, maybe. Or if it's artificial, just a question mark hypothesis, it has to have some type of FTL to get it from 1977 to 2025. It had to create a slip screen or a warp drive or something, who knows? But it is displaying some very interesting characteristics as it moves through our solar system. It's kind of going on this grand tour of our solar system, being very careful not to run into any planets or moons, taking its course. It shifted its course from a direct line to a curved line. Then in some way it displayed, and the news came out yesterday, some different course corrections that were non-gravitational, which is kind of interesting. And it pushed some vents out of the front and out of the back as if it was speeding up and slowing down. It's just an interesting object. It's so interesting. Now, could it be another one of these objects that comes through solar systems and sees life? Or could it be a race that sends these things out to go to solar systems and see life? I mean, there's so many, the question marks are just immense. Obviously, we don't have any real true answers. NASA, unfortunately, has hidden the images. They were supposed to be released a week ago, almost a week, 4 days ago. They haven't released them yet. I talked to Avi Loeb twice. I was the first person to interview Avi Loeb, the head of astrophysics at Harvard, and I was just interviewed him again yesterday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time. They have not released the documents or the photos and imagery, the video and the imagery, because they say that the government is shut down. So they have it, but they can reply to him with an email, but they can't attach the photos and the clips. So he's going to rendezvous with this object with his own probes that he's in control of when it gets near Jupiter again, and he's going to take some imagery and samples according to Avi Loeb. And he says that nobody can stop him from transmitting these images back, so we can see exactly what this thing really looks like. But it's exhibiting some artifacts from the surface of itself that just don't seem natural. So he raised it from a 30% chance to a 60% chance artificial. That's his expert opinion. Well, all we can say is what a great time to be alive, But one thing we have to consider, if this thing is artificial and it was getting ready to do a flyby, and it looked out to look down and scan the Earth and see what's going on down here, at the same time, they're probably going, what the hell are these people doing? They've got 30,000 nukes pointed at themselves while they're still on the planet. They got all this turmoil. They're unaliving each other's kids. Maybe we'll come back in another 1,800 years or whatever. But point being is, it's a great time to be alive to witness these types of things. And to Randall's point, we will see a lot more very strange objects because of the merger of the Sagittarius dwarf with the Milky Way. And then also we're on a collision course with Andromeda, but that's about close to 5 billion years away.
Oh, okay, so I don't need to worry today.
No, don't worry. We'll be Milkometer very soon.
and even when that happens, I think there's so much space that they don't necessarily believe anything bad will happen, right? That I'm sure.
Well, you do get some collisions. You do it from time to time because things can go through. Well, I guess there's evidence that something came through our solar system millions of years ago and shifted the position of Saturn and Uranus. They flipped positions. And then Uranus was so gravitationally tugged, it got tossed on its side. And the asteroid belt might also be evidence of a collision, which is talked about in the Enuma Elish, where there might have been an object, a satellite orbiting another planet or sun, like maybe a small planetoid or a mini planet, or maybe a moon of another planet, or something that came through our solar system. Scientists are saying, astronomers say it could have been 4 to 6 times larger than Earth, crashed into something within the solar system to create the asteroid belt. And people say, well, that's not enough mass to make a huge planet. Well, look to the inner Oort cloud and the outer Oort cloud, and if something explodes, it goes out. There's nothing stopping. Space allows you to flow very fluently. So as this thing blows out, some of it gets gravitationally captured at the Lagrange point. The rest of it moves out to the far outer edges of the inner solar system, and some potentially become part of the actual Kuiper belt itself. That's my personal opinion.
William, do you think this has any symbolic meaning of celestial alignments or?
I think 3i Atlas is just the AI simulation sending us a softball. It's just a glob of plasma. It's a Messiah ship. It's going to land in Brooklyn. Messiah's going to hop out, say hi to Avi Loeb, take off. So, end of story. But seriously, no, I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, so 2005, I wrote a book called Star Walkers and the Dimension of the Blessed. And this was some of my reflections on my first visits to Egypt. And in particular, I focused on what are called the Edfu creation texts. These are the building texts. They're found at the Temple of Horus at Edfu. And back in 2005, I was the first person that said, wait a minute, this beat for beat, this looks like the source material for Plato's story of Atlantis. I mean, Bavall and Hancock had mentioned it, but they hadn't used the dreaded A word in association with it because you couldn't. It was just too politically hot in Egypt at that time, but I didn't care. And I said, wait a minute, this is the Atlantis story. And then 10 years later, now we're 2015, 16, Ancient Aliens decides we're going to do an episode about probes and the possibility of advanced civilization sending out probes. And this drives me back into the Edfu creation text. And I realized, and this is what became the basis for our Ancient Aliens episode, that wait a minute, when you look at the Edfu creation text from the perspective these formless light beings are actually just information that emerged from some sort of a von Neumann probe, an AI probe loaded with DNA, chemistry, everything you need to find a planet, lay an egg, and out pops civilization. The Edfu creation texts are precisely a description of an advanced civilization, star civilization, sending out such a probe. And then, of course, 10 years on, now I'm 20 years into this investigation, here comes 3i Atlas. And you have big brains that are out there. Some know what they're talking about, some don't. But they're saying that 3i Atlas is a probe, which would make it a von Neumann probe, like Oumuamua. Very similar to what the Oumuamua story. In fact, on my Egypt tours for the past 10 years, I've always privately done this talk about Oumuamua and the Edfu creation text. So symbolically, archetypically speaking, beat for beat, two things are happening here, converging. You have the Edfu creation texts that are the source material, I believe, for Plato's story of Atlantis, as well as what was going on at that Parthenogenic temple at Nes, where Solon claimed to Plato he learned the story. It's all there, again, about the divine feminine, these Pleiadian priestesses seeding the planet. So that is happening in the Edfu creation text and the source story for Atlantis. And then you've got this technological side about it, where we're able to now comprehend a civilization that could create a von Neumann probe or could go interstellar. We now, in the past 100 years, understand there's not just one galaxy when we look out into the night sky. There's a trillion that are out there. And we've conceived shortcuts through space-time. We call them Einstein-Rosen bridges. We call them stargates and wormholes. And so we're now in a new age of consciousness here where we've got to put all these pieces together. And I think this is in part what 3i Atlas is stimulating us to do. I advise people, keep paying your bills. It's probably just going to whiz on by like Oumuamua did. It's going to leave a lot of questions in its wake that we hopefully will solve in our lifetime. But once again, the parallels with the Atlantis story are really low-hanging fruit here. The ancients were preoccupied by these cyclical events. Maybe, in the Edfu creation text, they were talking about a probe that came through long ago. Probably not a Muamua or Three Eye Atlas, maybe some other interstellar object that spawned civilization on Earth. And they knew that it left technology. It was ultimately going to be rediscovered and recreated. And maybe now is the time where we're the ones that are going to rediscover it and recreate it. I think it's very possible.
Can I
I
chime in for
remember.
just a second, Robert? I'm
Okay.
curious. I just want to bring a one perspective we haven't mentioned on all of this yet, and I want your takes on this. Um, Anytime I hear about something that's coming, like something, a UFO, whatever it is, especially when it comes to these interstellar objects that they're saying are acting weird, I always keep my foot in the Project Bluebeam door, and which is this idea that there's a political reason or a power reason why we're being fed that. And I'm just curious what you all think about, that possibility, at least with the with the narrative of it all.
Yeah, because the primary narrative of Three Eye Atlas is be afraid, be very afraid, right? With information's being withheld from you. They don't want you to know this. You don't deserve it. Be in fear. Meanwhile, the spokespersons are the ones that are, out there just riffing on this without any real solid information behind it. It's all guesswork and speculation. And that points to the direction of a psyop, of your blue beam hypothesis, that these guys are just telling stories out here is distraction, and that's a possibility.
Definitely a possibility. I mean, this thing is, nobody knows what it is. We can only just keep watching it, but it could be a harbinger of our awakening, like William was saying, man, we're now starting to realize there's a lot more going on out here. It's bringing our attention to the universe. And like you said, you can look out in space and the point of the tip of a needle and find 1 trillion galaxies. There's so much going on. And will they try to utilize our infancy of our knowledge or wisdom of what's out there against us? Yeah. And they could be doing things like, false flags and Project Blue beams against us to just pump more fear, because fear creates control. The more fear we have in us, the more control that we'll allow ourselves to be in or under. It's an unfortunate thing. We just have to, as humanity, wake up and realize we made it this far. We've gone through so much on this planet. There are so many catastrophes, so many calamities, so many illnesses and viruses and diseases and everything else. So the people that are here now are the strongest people that potentially have ever lived. So we have to see that strength that's already in us and just stop falling for some of the fear tactics.
Well, I remember one time we were out in Four Corners with Randall, and we were around the campfire talking about the moon. Randall brought up the idea that perhaps humans, we're here on Earth to evolve, to protect the planet. Instead of putting those weapons against ourselves, that maybe we have the technology that we could actually go to these comets and steer them away. And maybe that's part of our whole development here on planet Earth. What do you say to that, Randall?
Well, I mean, I like the idea that there is some kind of redemption for our species. And if we were to protect the planet from the kind of catastrophes that I've been researching for decades and decades, I think we'd be doing the biosphere a big service. It's well established statistically, 99.99% of all species that have ever lived are extinct now. What the transition that we've been through is the realization that the old model of Darwinian evolution, where you have at any given time 10% of the species incrementally disappearing and evolving into other species, while 10% of the species are replacing those who are gradually becoming extinct. The model now is not this continuum of evolutionary change, but it's very much of a sawtooth model. You have this proliferation of species, and then something interrupts it. You drop, and there might be, in the aftermath of that drop, there might be 3/4 to 90% of the extant species are now gone. And then there's this hiatus where the say the fossil record is very There's a dearth of fossils, and then all of a sudden, the term they use is rapid speciation. Something catalyzes this quick upsurge and replacement of species. This model now that's accepted for life, that I think is replacing the smooth continuum of the Darwinian model, this sawtooth model. I think we now can apply that same model to the rise and fall of civilizations. Civilizations become extinct. And I think many of the same cosmic forces that cause the extinction of life is what has erased or destroyed ancient civilizations, the predecessor civilizations. And that could be everything from asteroid to comet impacts to solar outbursts to perhaps a phenomenon on a galactic level, maybe nearby supernovas. Interestingly, if you look at some of these, though, like a supernova is probably going to cause a great deal of chaos within the sphere of comets, which is then going to cause this cascading descent of many comets into the interplanetary zone, where they can, and it's interesting to me that it's sort of prefacing his count of Atlantis in Timaeus. Plato mentions the myth of Phaeton, which I take I think it's almost very explicit that it is a depiction of a memory of an encounter, a cometary encounter. Interestingly, there's a British school of neo-catastrophism that's been researching these kinds of things and willing to look at the relation between myth and hard science, and concluded that, comets have played a fundamental role in the evolution of life on Earth. And one of their theories has been, which is now, to me, established a high degree of credibility, is that somewhere between 25 and 30,000 years ago, a very large comet came into the inner solar system, began to orbit between Jupiter and the Sun, started undergoing a hierarchy of disintegrations, spawning maybe very much as like what we saw in July of '94, if you remember, Shoemaker-Levy 9 was a single cometary nucleus that was ripped into 21 subnuclei, which then subsequently plowed into Jupiter. Well, this is part of what we now understand as the life cycle of comets. They're in deep space, they're in hibernation, but whatever force sends them sunward, they now become active. They undergo this hierarchy of transformations, and ultimately, a couple of things happen. They either are hit planets, they turn into dust. The zodiacal lights are probably dust left over from that comet, or most likely they fall into the sun. And there's emerging evidence now that there is a non-linear response from the sun from the infall of these cometary masses, because we've now seen two examples of almost instantaneous coronal mass ejections on a major scale immediately after the infall of a cometary mass. And so in this scenario, from a comet coming into the inner solar system 25 to 30,000 years ago, also coincides with what's called the final phase of the late Wisconsin Ice Age. And there was a rapid recooling of the Earth around 25 to 26,000 years ago that lasted up until between 13 and 15,000 years ago. And it could be because the Earth essentially got dusted. If you have an impact into the land, it'll throw dust up into the atmosphere that blocks the sun. It'll trigger volcanism, which then puts sulfides in the atmosphere. So you have this whole cascading series of feedback effects that occur. We have built our civilization in this little window where essentially we've been blessed by not being subject to these cosmic catastrophes. Billy, as you're well aware, you were talking 250,000 years ago, and Will finding evidence that there were hominids, Homo sapiens sapiens, that long ago. Well, to me, it's implausible that we existed for that length of time without creating previous civilizations. Where the archaeologists miss the point, I think, is that they're looking in a mirror. They're looking for a civilization that would look like mirror our own. And a civilization doesn't need to look anything like ours. And I believe, and we're not going to probably have time to talk about this today, but I think where we need to be looking is towards the fourth state of matter. that the ancient cultures knew plasma physics, and they knew how to, using frequencies, to cause disorganized, incoherent plasmas to cohere into organized systems that they could then utilize to draw energy from. And in that science, of which I believe was the precursor to alchemy, they knew how to link the energies of the heavens and the energies of the earth. And I think we're seeing now a rediscovery of that, of the plasma science. And this could be a real game changer. I'm going to be talking about this more at the conference. But yeah, I mean, I could show some very quick. I don't want to monopolize this because I guess we're getting towards the end of it. But just a couple of things that are happening right now. I have been able to witness some applications of this technology and have known enough credible people now that have been working with it to know that it's definitely viable and it's definitely happening. And it's going to change the industrial landscape of the planet if it's not suppressed. But I think it's rapidly approaching the point where it's not going to be possible to suppress it because it has applications all the way from the grassroots, from the garage mechanic tinkering in their garage, retrofitting generators and automobiles, all the way up to the highest industrial levels and everything in between. And ultimately, what I think is inherent in that technology is going to be perhaps the secret to interstellar travel and interstellar propulsion, or at least at the beginning stages, interplanetary propulsion. So there's this incredible potential there that's happening right now. And the Indian government is actually now really looking into, they're actually actively exploring it because they believe that this technology represents the technology that was described in the Vedas, symbolized in, for example, as the Vajra. And I've got some really interesting correlations I could show you guys. I'd love to show you guys. Maybe we'll have to wait. That'll be up to Robert's call. But I could show you really quickly one thing that was the test that I witnessed summer before last, when when a generator was outfitted with a technology based upon these resonant frequencies and the effects that it did. Do we have time for that, Robert, or is this?
Well, I think we're out of time for that this
Okay,
time.
well, we'll save it then. We'll save it.
Yeah. What do you think, Beckett? Do you have something to say on that? Okay.
Conference.
Yeah. Let's just wrap up. We just have one question before we.
Can I make one final statement?
Okay.
This will be quick, okay? That comet that I was talking about that broke up became the source of the Taurid meteor stream. And the Taurid meteor stream is embedded in all kinds of cool symbolism and myths. The radiant of the Taurid meteor stream is the Pleiades. And there's a very interesting connection here. But twice each year, the Earth crosses the Taurid meteor stream, right? Twice, late June, late October. I do a whole presentation on showing where I believe that the 3 days from All Hallows Eve to All Souls Day and All Saints Day are the 3 days, interestingly, that Earth is passing through the peak of the Taurid meteor stream. So as we're speaking here right now about this, Earth is immersed in the Taurid meteor stream.
Yeah.
And probably gave rise to, Halloween and the other celebrations that have deep, deep roots. So I just wanted to throw that out. So it's auspicious that we're sitting here now during the peak of the fall time Taurid stream.
Yeah, it's very auspicious, Randall. I'm grateful that you brought that back in because I love that story about Halloween and it's all connected. And then that brings us back to spirituality and all those things. Thank you so much, Randall, for taking this time when you're getting ready to head out to the Azores. I know you're doing prep work, and I know you really didn't have this time. And so grateful to all you guys, William Henry, Billy Carson, Will Broww, Michael Collins, for also jumping on here last minute. And we just wanted to give you guys a taste, a preview of what you can expect to encounter in Scottsdale December 5th through the 7th for the Quest for Ancient Civilizations. I'm pretty lucky. I get to hang with guys like this all the time. We get to hang out and have questions and answers with each other like this all the time. We could literally go on for hours. And I know we don't have that time, but that's where the hours on the weekend come in. You'll be able to connect with all these cool guys in person. And we got some cool ladies as well. We didn't forget the ladies. I don't want to leave them out, but it's going to be a great time, and we're looking forward to seeing you all in Scottsdale, December 5th through the 7th. And Randall, do you have some closing words before we leave? We're going to get you back on when you get back from the Azores too. So we're going to try to get you back on one more time before the event.
No, not really. Other than, I'd like to, I'm very keen on and trying to share this information I've got from 40 years of geological study, and why the archaeologists are missing the picture, because they don't understand the geological story that the earth is telling us. From Job 8th verse, 12th chapter, I believe, if I remember right, a verse that I've kind of used as one of my taglines for years: speak to the earth and it shall teach thee. So that's what I've been trying to do, enter a dialogue with the earth for all these years. And that's part of what this Azores trip is about, extending and deepening this dialogue with the earth, and trying to learn what she has to teach us.
Nice.
Safe travels, Randall.
Thank you, Will.
Yes.
William,
Yes. See you in December.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Godspeed.
Likewise, Billy.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you when you get back, Randall. Thank you so much, Randall. This is really cool. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you guys as well.
No problem. Now I got to get with Mike Robertson and record a couple of videos that are going to be posted while I'm gone. All right, guys. I guess I'll sign off then. So long.
All right. Thank
See
you.
you all in December. Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.